Alrighty, everyone, hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of my nonsense, and probably also, within moments, B-Lock's nonsense. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about a concept that I see a lot, having been on the internet, and especially on the witchy side of the internet for several years now, and that is the concept of being a witch for hire. And I know people who do this, I have friends who do this, and there's definitely some layers to it, but very specifically, I also want to talk about the concept of selling stuff. Selling stuff to people to be witches, right? Like being a witch for hire and also being a witchy supply shop. There's layers to this, and we'll get into it. But first, before we get into all that, hello, my name is Sarah Rastreisen, and this is B-Log. What baby? What baby? Oh, he's all wet because he had a bath. And I am a Christian witch content creator, writer, educator, very specifically a writer of these two books right here, Discovering and Discerning Christian Witchcraft, which if you are confused about how these two words go together in the same sentence, these two books lay it out for you. So I would highly recommend checking that out. We make a lot of arguments about the validity of this practice, about how to use it, about where and when and why and how, about what'll happen if you go down this path far enough. All that kind of stuff. But if you don't want to grab a book just yet, that's fine. Go ahead and like the video, subscribe, ring the bell so you can see more of me and Biba every single Friday. And if you want to support me, all you got to do is head over to my Patreon. I post videos like this 2 weeks early and ad-free and a lot of other stuff. But anyway, selling witchcraft, basically. The ethics behind this. I've just been thinking about this a little bit, mostly because I stumbled upon some weird ads on TikTok Shop.
Beautiful money bowl kit. It comes with everything you need to attract abundance. The brass bowl, crystals, herbs, and ritual candles are all included. It is perfect for your workspace. Shop now.
And now, if some of y'all here are not on TikTok, TikTok Shop is basically the platform's built-in shopping stage, basically, where you can get pretty much anything on planet Earth on this damn thing. And, it's heavily incentivized at this point for users to buy things and then also post videos of the things that they have bought and try to make commission on it or to fulfill the requirements of getting free samples. I've done stuff like this myself. Sometimes I see something that I like and that I would, want to have. As someone with a big enough page, I can request a free sample, and when I get it, all I have to do is post a video about whether or not I liked it. I'm always truthful in those reviews, but I also only post the one video I need to get the damn samples, so whatever. However, on TikTok, if you scroll around a little while, you'll notice there's quite a lot of those videos. A lot of people have taken to just getting all kinds of McJunk and just making non-stop affiliate commission videos with this kind of stuff. And so it's not rare to see. It's kind of like TikTok has become QVC at this point. We have reinvented, unfortunately, the home shopping network. Now you can't go more than 2 videos without seeing a bunch of just slop, for lack of a better word. Even AI slop. Sometimes the videos are AI generated showing the product, which confuses me, because how is an AI generated video supposed to accurately show your product? Oh my god, what? I even put my own books on my TikTok Shop, because why the hell not? Am I right? At the end of the day, whether you're ordering from my actual website or you're ordering from me on TikTok Shop, you're still ordering from me. So it's, it's just one less barrier to purchase, and that makes sense as someone who, runs a business selling books as an indie author. Whatever. All that aside, though, as I was scrolling one day, I also noticed these videos for these money spell kits and, other things like that. At first, I wouldn't have thought that was entirely out of the ordinary. I've seen tarot decks on TikTok Shop. I've seen just basic spell supplies, right? Like, candles or whatever. It's basically just like a weirder drop shipping nightmare. It's just Amazon 2.0 at this point. But seeing these kits specifically had me like, interesting. And also just made me start thinking more about the ethics of being a witch for hire or selling these kinds of things to begin with. Not because I think there's anything particularly wrong with having a witchy shop or selling things like crystals and candles and whatever, but because of the way that, especially the first guy I saw was talking about it, it just seemed different. There was something off about doing this versus just holding up a collection of crystals and saying, would you like an amethyst? Would you like a jasper? Would you like a whatever? Or holding up, some dried herbs and being like, hey, these herbs can do X, Y, and Z. Here's a selection. Which one would you like, right? This had a different quality to it, where it's more like, everything you need to do a money spell is in this, and you just have to buy these items and you'll be able to do a money spell that gets you money. And especially as we, continue in these spaces more and more, and witchcraft continues to get more and more popular as it has since the lockdown era in 2020, it just got me feeling kind of weird. It got me feeling the same kind of way that I feel when I see like mega church pastors promising all this wealth if you only just donate to their church. You know what I mean? As much as in an economy like this, I do want to see everyone get their bag. It's the way in which we get our bag that confuses me a little bit. And again, there's nothing wrong with selling green candles. There's nothing wrong with selling, specific herbs or spices like cinnamon and whatever else. There's nothing wrong with selling like bells and chimes and whatever. But it's putting all this together and being like, here, I've basically built a money spell for you. Go ahead and use this and you'll get money. So basically making them pay money to get the thing to get money, without teaching them how magic works or why or where, and just kind of putting more stuff into their hands that they may or may not actually need or understand the theory around. I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't think that is actually long-term helpful for anyone. I don't think that is anything more than just something that we saw years ago, actually, when Sephora put out this beginner's witch kit, just capitalizing on the witch hype, on the sudden popularity of witchcraft, in which Sephora, the makeup company, was starting to hand out these kits of things like a rose quartz and like a bundle of sage and things like that, and just being completely tone deaf and clearly just trying to make a buck off of spiritual practice, and especially by using things that were endangered like white sage and things like that, right? So every time I see stuff like this, and I also see witch for hire services, I always get a little And again, I'm not entirely for or against necessarily. I have friends who do spells for hire. I have friends who sell witchy objects, right, and witchy bundles and things like that. Hell, even with Discovering Christian Witchcraft, part of a promo deal we did with my friend and I was we built a beginner Christian witch kit. And this was a kit that had things like a bell, a rosary, holy water, holy oil, and some tea lights, just and like a little crystal bracelet, very basic stuff in case someone had literally nothing. And we also wrote up a page, the QR code inside, that give an explanation for all these items and what they do and how to use them and what they're for and all that kind of stuff, right? So that was something built for people who had literally nothing to work with, who wanted to get started with some kind of tools and also wanted to know what the tools are and what they do. So that is why I will say I think that is personally a little bit different, because again, these are tools that are multi-use, that are continual use, that aren't just built for one function, and that have explanations attached to them. So people, can start figuring out like what they like. These are very basic items that are at the basis of any Christian practice and pop up a lot. So it's not like they're, weird, obscure things that are going to get lost or just sit around and do nothing. But with spells for hire and these very specific things that don't explain to you the components of the spell, why, where, how, the reason I don't like it is, again, because it takes the agency and autonomy away from the person. That's why I don't choose to do them. If other people want to get their bag doing spells for people, even that has me like, okay, well, you're doing something. You are putting your own time and materials and effort into this, which makes sense for compensation. And even putting together a little kit, I guess, sure, technically, but again, it's the way we approach it that I think is where the ethics lie. And it's the boundaries we put on how we do it that I think make the most make or break with this kind of stuff. And I can't speak for anyone else, but I will tell you why I personally do not sell items like that, and why I personally do not do spells for hire. So again, if you do spell work for hire, cool, I guess, right? Again, you've put your time and effort into that. If you sell items like, candles or whatever, especially like candles you've made yourself and you've customized yourself and like all these kinds of fun things, if you're selling bundles of crystals and other things that like maybe have some explanation of what they are and what they do, cool. If you're just blatantly trying to sell off a bag of green candles and a cinnamon stick and a bay leaf as this like wonder cure for your financial woes, that's where I draw the line and say no. So with me, again, I don't do spell work for hire. I do tarot readings on my site. You can always get a tarot reading from me if you want one of those. But when it comes to spell work, no. Because I do believe that someone should learn how to do this stuff themselves if they want to have those kinds of effects. Because witchcraft is something that is meant to be accessible from the foundation of the craft. Most folk magic practice isn't like folk magic because it's, obscure and weird and hard to do. It's folk magic because it was made by the folk, because it was made by people who didn't have anything. It was made by folk who didn't have access to a lot of materials and would just have to go outside and go find like whatever sticks and rocks and leaves they could out there, right? It was invented by people who had nothing. The reason you see iconography with the cauldron and blah 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 is because people usually had a big cast iron pot over a cook fire, and that's the thing they were using to make all kinds of medicines, right? All that toil and bubble nonsense. They were usually making like soup or medicines or something in that thing, and it just kind of got sucked into that witch aesthetic because witches were people who were just using what they had around. So for me, this idea that like you would have to pay a witch to do anything in the first place is silly to me. It's silly to me because unlike learning how to like change the oil in your car or learning how to draw or learning how to do things that require like heavy technical skill and years of hard practice, witchcraft is something that you can start at any point and get better at with time reasonably quickly and learn more about yourself as you go learning about the witchcraft. It's something that really is accessible to everyone to do, from the tiniest scales to the grandest scales, and the more complicated stuff you want to do, the more you have to do your research and all that cool, yeah, but it's still possible to get into. And it's still enjoyable even if you are just starting, just as much as it is if you have been doing it for like decades. You can also see tangible effects with your magic within the first spell you ever do, right? It's not like those high skill things that take decades and decades to come even close to being halfway decent at, like drawing or music or writing or anything else. It's a craft, yes, like those, but it's not something that is so out of reach that you can't just kind of pick it up and start fiddling with it. And secondly, the reason I don't do witch stuff for hire is because I'm of the opinion that if someone really wanted to do something to someone else, they would have the means to do it themselves. Something that I've talked about with my friends who do witchcraft stuff for hire is the fact that they do in fact have some rules and regulations on who's going to request spells of them. And it's not just like anyone can say, hey, I want you to hex this person to death, please do that for me, right? It's not like anyone can just walk up with a request like that. My friends who do this kind of stuff do it with very specific clients, or they take on very specific kinds of spells, or they make it damn clear that they're not going to put themselves in danger for the sake of a spell. Because if you know anything about magic, it's not just offensive, it's also defensive. And for someone to go pay someone else money, basically like a hitman, to go put themselves in all kinds of danger and face all kinds of potential repercussions on their behalf, I think that's less an issue with the person doing the spell service and more an issue with the person requesting it. The person requesting it seems to want to put all of the onus on someone else, all the responsibility on someone else, and just throw money at the problem and walk away. And I don't like that, and therefore I don't participate in that kind of thing. I'll tell someone how to make a spell, I'll explain and guide them through how to do that and what to do. Sure, absolutely. But I'm not going to do it for them. I believe that if you want it bad enough, you're going to figure out how to do it yourself. You know, that's how you learn. That's how you grow. That's what you do. If I'm going to do a spell for someone, it's going to be just because I feel like it, because I want to help that person with whatever I can offer and bring to the table. I don't charge for it because I'm not going to have the right investment in it. I don't want to be on the other end of another possible practitioner's wards and, you know, retaliatory magic. I don't want to deal with that, and I also don't want to rob someone of the opportunity to actually learn this stuff themselves and build their own skills. So spell work for hire, that's why I don't do it. But other folks might not have the same qualms with it, might be fine putting their time, attention, and energy, and also putting their ass on the line to go do that. Spell work for hire, not that big of a problem to me personally, if people want to do that and are okay with doing that. And even the selling of stuff, again, not that much of a problem, so long as you are not marketing these things as these amazing cure-alls to people's problems. I do a money spell every month. I am not the next Jeff Bezos. It's not because my money spells don't work, but it's because the money spells that I do have a very specific character to them and are done with a very specific god, aka the Christian God. You know, the God famously whose son said, "You cannot serve God and money," right? In fact, Matthew 6:24 to the end of that chapter is a fixture, is the high focus of my magic spell every time, because the money spell isn't about getting a bunch of just insane wealth. The money spell is about sustaining my house and keeping my focus on things that actually matter and not worrying about money. Not having to worry about money. Being able to put my mind on greater pursuits than money. So this idea that people are going to like sell a money spell and be like, this is everything you need to fix your financial problems and la la la, but like not explain how it works, not explain the theory behind it, not explain the energies they're working with, or you know, the concepts that they're bringing into it, not explain any of that, but just say, hey, spend money to do this thing and maybe hopefully get money. That feels predatory to me. That feels predatory specifically. I don't like that. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's right to hold up what is essentially a collection of shit you could get from the dollar store and say, this will solve all your problems. This will solve your relationship problems. It'll solve your money problems. It'll solve this and that. No. Right? Again, different story if it's something you've crafted. My friend Spirituality, she has a really cool shop where she makes all these candles herself. She's also selling, you know, the little other trinkets and crystals and stuff like that, but she puts a lot of time into like actively making candles custom for each client. That's a lot different. You can't just go to the store and find that. Handing out just basically any cheap candles you can find on Amazon though, and also like a cinnamon stick, that's crazy to me. I don't know, something about that's crazy. You can find bulk supplies of cinnamon sticks and bay leaves and whatever else. You can just Google some correspondences of things and go do that. You can just go find something green that reminds you of money and go use that. You don't need to be buying these hack-ass things off places like TikTok Shop. You just don't need to do that. And in fact, if anything, if I had to choose between doing spells for money and selling the spell kits like that, I'd rather someone just sell the damn spell work at that point, right? Nonetheless, it's the way in which you approach it. If you said, hey, you know, here's like an easy starter kit. Let me explain to you all these items. Let me explain what they do. Let me even put some of my own goodness into them, right? I'm going to bless them for you or do whatever. I'm going to, you know, infuse them. I'm going to maybe make an oil blend specifically to go in it that I have crafted. My friend Lena has, you know, oils and stuff that she makes and all that stuff. She charms those herself and puts effort into that. Sure, right? That would be one thing. But as a witch of many years, to see a video where that was literally just like a fucking cinnamon stick, a bay leaf, and a green candle, and they're just making it sound like this is some groundbreaking, like, all you need to get money. That was crazy. Again, it felt like mega church pastor antics. Because what on earth are you talking about? You can do a money spell with a damn quarter if you want. You don't need to buy anything, and you definitely don't need to start associating these extremely mundane objects with the magical power. Again, this is another reason I don't like this. It bypasses the theory. Last time we were talking about Father Amort in his Memoirs of an Exorcist, he was saying, you know, people asking tarot cards questions, they're giving the cards power they don't have. Likewise with these items, even from an animistic perspective, the spirit of cinnamon or bay leaf is not going to be the ultimate powerhouse of the spell. You know what I mean? It's not gonna be the source of the big power. If you are someone who works with a deity, that deity's blessings are the big power. If you're working with just your own self, your own soul is the battery of that spell. The fucking cinnamon stick is just part of helping you organize that magic and maybe getting a little bit of a boost from that little spirit of that cinnamon. So you're telling people that this is all they need to do magic, thereby teaching them that without these things they cannot do magic. And that's really the big frustration to me, is when people do stuff like that, because that's not how it works. No, you don't need any items at all to do magic. We've discussed this so many times. You don't need anything to do magic. But when you start doing this stuff and commercializing witchcraft to this degree and using that kind of ideology and that kind of language, we all get into so much trouble. We start falling into the thing that the church was calling a minor heresy for a long time, which is superstition, right? Superstition being basically what magic was codified as before it became a big mess with the witch trials. Magic back in the day was just minor heresy, was superstition, in that people were putting their belief in these random ass objects and misattributing where true power comes from, basically. Which is really funny to think about how people continue to do that today, acting like they have no power and no ability if they don't have very specific items, blah blah blah. This is largely also the fault of many of these witchy books that insist that if you're going to do any of these kinds of spells, you got to have all these specific ingredients and blah blah blah. The early New Age, like early 2000s books, especially like the ones I used to have, like Pure Magic, were rife with these things, where they're like, you need these very specific herbs that there's no way you're ever gonna fucking get anytime soon or anywhere easily or for, you know, any reasonable amount of money to do this spell. If you don't have them, you're shit out of luck. No, that's how people get into trouble. That's how people end up spending a lot of money on things that they don't ever actually use. That's how they end up with the over-commercialization of witchcraft, where they just have tons and tons of, you know, tarot decks and crystals and herbs and stuff that they don't actually do anything with, because they were like a single use for one spell and then they just sat there on their shelves and never did anything again. Even now, as an old witch, I still have to fight the urge to go and collect all the mugwort and stuff in my yard, because I know functionally I'm not going to do anything with the mugwort. I don't use mugwort regularly in my practice. Cinnamon sticks, though, I will buy the giant BJ's Costco jug, because not only do I use those in my spells, I also use them in my coffee in the morning. There's a functional use for them. There's a reason for me to be regularly adding them to my cart. So really, to me, the ethical divide between whether I'm okay with spell work for hire, whether I'm okay with you know, selling witchy things and commercializing witchcraft and witchcraft practices and tools or not, very much depends on, like, how are you treating your approach to selling it, right? When I sell my tarot readings, for instance, I show exactly the form that I lay them out. I give the actual booklet descriptions of each card, and then I explain my thought process of what I'm seeing. I explain the imagery. I explain, like, how they connect to me, what I'm looking at, what it's feeling like, how I'm you know, connecting the definitions to things. I feel like if people bought tarot readings from me long enough and saw what I'm telling them and how I'm describing these cards and looking at it, they might learn how to read tarot themselves eventually. They might figure that out themselves, right? But tarot is one of those things you can do even if you already know how to read tarot. You can still get a tarot reading from someone else, because someone else seeing what they pick up and what they see is helpful. It's a cross-referencing, right? You don't want to have only one book on any subject. You want to have a few, so you cross-reference and make sure that this one book you have was actually accurate to begin with. That's a different story. Even then, I still try to explain how I'm moving. I don't just say, like, yep, here it is, with no explanation. Because I believe in empowerment. I believe that if the way that you are doing spell work and selling spell items does not empower people to realize the ways in which they can do this themselves, if you're not explaining your thought process, if you're not, like, you know, walking through it and showing, like, hey, look, we're going to do this, that, and the other thing, this is the plan. If you're not saying, like, hey, you know, here are these items, here's what they do, here's how you can use them multiple ways and get as much use as possible out of them. Hey, you know, here's the theory behind this kind of stuff, here's why it works. If you're not doing that kind of stuff, it just, I mean, yeah, I guess you're making a repeat customer base for yourself, but you're also, again, you're robbing people of the ability to figure these things out for themselves, to get the courage to do it themselves. I don't like that. I just do what you want to do, but I don't like that. I don't like it. I don't think that, that especially in terms of spirituality, that makes any sense to do. Don't like it. I think that just creates more dependency and more kind of learned helplessness in people, when in reality, the stuff that they're paying money for is stuff that they could easily just pay less money for in terms of materials. Again, go to the dollar store and get some candles, and then figure out how to do themselves and empower themselves with on their own, you know? So, I don't know. What do you guys think about it? Because for me, that's my thoughts. And I just remember seeing this fucking video, and I was just like, oh, this rubs me 17,000 ways wrong. So I believe I've articulated why at this point, but I would love to know your thoughts as well. So, and I will see you guys next time for another interesting discussion. See ya.